It kind of happens as you get older. Thank you for the opportunity to come up here and share a little bit of my story, of my cancer survivor story. I've had the opportunity to share it a couple times, and I don't know if it makes me more nervous or more at ease to be around, fellow survivors. Because sometimes you kind of feel like in some ways you're preaching to the choir, because we all get it, and that's kind of one of the blessings about, one of the many blessings about having the opportunity to come to this event is that, we're around, brothers and sisters that are very aware of the fight, what it entails, and you can have those conversations with less words, which in many ways is a blessing. Because I think every cancer survivor here, cancer patient here, knows what it's like to sit, in that hospital room with that doctor, and you get that news, and they're talking to you about your diagnosis, and it's almost kind of like remember Peanuts, the cartoon Peanuts? And they're saying something, but you don't know what they're saying because you're just zoning out, because you're still wrapping your mind around the fact that you just got told that you got cancer, right? And it's kind of like that same whirlwind throughout all of our experiences. And all of our experiences are different in many different ways, and they all start at different times. And my experience with cancer started actually when I was 9 years old, before I was ever diagnosed. It happened at an airport in Atlanta when I was with my father. My father's my hero, and he's my mentor. He was my confidant. He was my best friend, and he's really set the stage for me when it comes to my pursuits in life. And when we were in this airport, we saw this team of people walking by, and you could tell that these people that were walking by were pretty special. And they just were all really tall and lean and fit, and they just looked like they're just like there's something different about them. And I noticed this one thing about all these individuals that they had in common is they all had these tattoos on their calves, on their calf muscles. And the tattoo on their calf muscle was a tattoo of an Iron Man emblem. And I don't know if the Iron Man is it's like the watch, the Iron Man watch. And so I asked my dad, I'm like, what is it, like, what's that emblem mean? What does it stand for? And he was like, well, that means that they are the world's best athletes, and they competed in the world's hardest endurance race. And he kept on talking about this race, and I could tell like he was just so impressed by these people. At 9 years old, I determined that one of these days I was going to become an Ironman. I didn't know what that meant, but I just knew that my dad loved that idea, and he really admired those athletes. And so fast forward, I went through life, went into the Marines, went to war, became a counterintelligence agent, and in 2009, I was diagnosed. 2008, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and it's kind of interesting because I had just come back from war, and I thought that I had experienced all of life's challenges at that point, and then going through that first diagnosis was just for me. It felt like kind of a kind of a punch in the gut. It felt like it was a little bit unfair, but I tried to make the best of the situation. I rallied my friends around me, and I really got a taste of how human I am. I think in your going through the Marines in your 20s, you think that you're invincible, and then all of a sudden you get diagnosed with this disease, and you realize like how fragile and frail that you are. So when I went through this diagnosis of cancer, as many of you probably understand already, is that some people are there and can understand the challenges and can support you through it, and some people it's kind of outside of their scope of understanding of like what to do. But I appreciated the fact that whoever was there could be there, and to mark I ended up beating that disease, and to mark the occasion of overcoming that, I decided to pursue the Ironman finally, right? Like start getting a triathlon. And still, I didn't know what that meant. All I knew was just that, I needed to get in really good shape, especially like just getting off of 6 months of chemotherapy. So I started training even more, and I was getting in really good shape, and I'm running farther than I've ever ran before, and I'm learning to swim and I'm learning to bike, and then I find out that not only did my cancer come back, but that it was stage 4, and it was throughout my entire lymphatic system, and it was wrapped around my lungs, and it was going up my going. I was about to have a neurologic invasion, and it was a humbling experience to actually to be in that position, because here I was in the best shape of my life, training for, or trying to learn to train for the sport of triathlon, which I'd never done before. And then all of a sudden I find out that not only is my disease back, but it's so far advanced that there's nothing that the doctors could do to save my life. So when you find out that you're going to die, some of us were told that. Some of us were told that straight up, and some of us were just, were told by the doctors themselves. And when the doctor tells you, it's interesting, because when you go to war, you experience, when I went to Iraq, for example, people were like, oh, you could potentially die. And honestly, I was okay with that. I wasn't bothered by that at all, because the reality is that we're not going there, for any other reason, we're going there for many reasons, but we knew that would be a risk. But when you're told that by a doctor, it's so incredibly defeating, because you're just like, hold on a second, you feel like it's almost out of your control, and depending on your access to information, or your faith, or your family's access to information, you're kind of left without. And it was my father who reached out to an oncologist in Indiana, who then reached out to an oncologist at UCSD, and then came to a decision that there might have been a treatment that could save my life. And so the treatment was a tandem bone marrow stem cell transplant, with an autologous transplant with high-dose chemotherapy, which is going to last about 8 months. And when I started that treatment, my father was a really big figure in that, because not only did he help me get through the first battle of cancer, he was able to find a treatment that could save my life for the second battle of cancer. Here he was again, by my side, while I was going through the second one. And we don't really understand when we find out that we're going to be going through these treatments, how incredibly aggressive that they are. And so when I was kind of in palliative care, to make me comfortable before I was transferred to this clinical trial, I was on Dilaudid and morphine and all these drugs, and it's crazy the things that you'll commit to and the things that you'll say when you're that high. And so I told my dad and my friends, I'm like, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. But what I'm gonna do while I'm dying is I'm gonna pursue what I always wanted to pursue, and I'm gonna continue pursuing the Ironman, this triathlon. And I mean, they kind of looked at me like I was a child, in a sense. Like, this is, it's cute, and it's funny to hear this coming from this, from him. But no one really took me seriously, because of obviously the odds were just so incredibly against me. And then even when I was in palliative care and transferred over to UCSD to start the trial, I started training. And I started training in my hospital. And it's funny, people were talking about, people asked me there, when I was going through, it's like, what are you thinking about the Ironman and getting there? And I'm like, I'm just thinking about today, man. And I think everybody here in a pink shirt, or wearing a pink shirt, gets that. Because we're not thinking about next week, we're just thinking about how to be able to get through this moment in time right now. How am I going to get to see tomorrow? And that's exactly what it was like. So every day I looked at it like, let me do whatever I can do, just to be able to survive this. And so I would do lunges, I would do laps around the nurses' station, and I used social media to be able to garner more support. And then I would have swim coaches come to my hospital room and teach me how to actually do swim strokes, and I had cycling coaches come to the hospital room, and this was all through friend networks, like the people to your left right now, the people to your right now, people that cared, that were like, let me help this guy out. And then I was released from the hospital in August after 13 months, and I was at the Ironman World Championships 2 months later in October of that, 8 weeks later. Thank you. And I didn't qualify for the Ironman World Championships, obviously, because I was almost dying the whole time. But it's that community effort. It was the community that came together and that rallied for me, and word of mouth got around. And the Ironman people were like, if you can survive your cancer, then I'm sure you could survive the Ironman World Championships. I'm like, I don't know. I've never ran a marathon in my life. And so for the race, it was, I was they identified me to be kind of like one of the people they're going to follow around during the race. And it's one thing to try this experiment. It's a 140-mile race. It's been years since I've done it. It was like a 2-mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and a full distance marathon all in one sitting. And when I got to that race day, and there's like thousands of professional athletes that are all like at this race start with you. And to be honest with you, people are like, you would think that I would have been nervous, but to be honest with you, I wasn't nervous at all. I wasn't nervous not because of the fact that I felt like I knew what I was doing, but I wasn't nervous because of the fact that I realized that whatever could have been done has been done. And the coaches being there for me, the other cancer patients being there for me, my brothers and sisters in the fight being there for me, my family, my father being there for me and helping me to get to this day. It's like, now it's just time to just go out there and do it, And, it was interesting about, because most people finish that race in about 12 to 13 hours. And for me, it took me about, I want to say it was like 15 or 16 hours to finish the race. And when you're coming back, on the fields of, in the black lava fields of Hawaii, and you're running into the town of Kona, and all you see is this, just because it's black on black, and it's in the middle of the night by the time you get to this point. And all you see in the horizon is this strip of white light, from the town of Kona. And it was incredibly reminiscent of being in that hospital room, inpatient in that hospital room with the lights off, and you can't sleep, and you keep on hearing this, this machine that's pumping this chemo into your body going beep, 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 because it's time to change out the bag or something like that. But I'm just keep on thinking about that white strip of light on the bottom of that hospital door, And then I was comparing it to that to that strip of light off in the horizon on these black lava fields. And I remember sitting in my bed when I was in the hospital thinking about, man, all I want to do is be able to get to that door and be able to walk out of here. And I thought about that every single step all the way to Kona when I finished that World Championships. And when my father was there to greet me at the finish line, and tens of thousands of people, are there to greet you at the finish line, because they'll be there for the winner, the person that wins the race, and then at the end of the night, everybody will come to the race at the end and watch us finish. People like you and me who like have no reason to be there, but we are. And so they're all there to kind of clap you in, right? And I'll tell you what, man. I mean, like, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. It was absolutely spiritual. Crossing that finish line and seeing my father, waiting for me. And I mean, at that time, I was a grown man, and I fell into his arms like I was a child again, just literally collapsed in his arms. And I haven't cried that hard in my entire life. It was relieving a pressure valve of built up tension that had been building up since the moment I was diagnosed. And then finally coming to the realization that it was all worth it. And then after that, coming to the realization that this wasn't just for me, this was for everybody. This is for my father, of course, my father, but more importantly, it was for my brothers and sisters who are still fighting their own diseases and still fighting their own cancers, And I couldn't shake the fact and couldn't stop thinking about the fact of the ones that couldn't be there today in order to be able to celebrate with me. Albeit either because they couldn't beat their disease or they're still in the process of going through that. So you can imagine that I felt a certain reprieve when I was done with that chapter, and I continued pursuing the fight by joining the cancer community and American Cancer Society and then Morris Cancer Center at UCSD, and now I'm part of the health system administration, and I felt that the fight was over for me and my family, that we've been there, we have done that, we have seen the mountaintop, and we've overcome it. And that was until the day that my dad was diagnosed with AML, leukemia. And on his deathbed, he had been my mentor and he had been my guide for years and years and years. And on his deathbed, I remember telling him, I was like, Dad, I don't know what I'm going to do. What am I going to do without you? What am I going to do with this next chapter? And we were reflecting on the fact that, cancer is a brutal, brutal disease. And it absolutely doesn't discriminate. It doesn't say to us, like, oh, you know what, you've been through enough, and I'm going to leave you alone. It doesn't work like that. And it felt so incredibly unfair, especially the fact that, me and my father, like, we have so much good stuff that we're going to do in this world and plan on doing. And he says to me, he's like, you know what, son? He's like, don't worry about it. He's like, no matter what it is that you do, you're going to bring the world light. You're going to bring these people light. And my father was a man of few words. He was a steel worker in Cleveland, Ohio for many years, and we're a blue-collar family. And when he said something, he meant it. And those words will always stick with me. And I think that all of us, albeit going through cancer or always experiencing it, and everybody here right now, that's what we're doing with the world, and that's what we're doing with the communities. We're bringing the world light. When people who are going through cancer diagnosis and people who are newly diagnosed are not aware of the resources that are available to them, this is where they go. You're who they go to. Because you are that light, you are that source, you are that leverage that they need in order to be able to understand what to be able to do with their diagnosis, how to be able to overcome it, and also how to be able to manage it with their family and friends, And you're absolutely invaluable. You're invaluable to me when I was going through my diagnosis. You're invaluable today to the countless other cancer patients who are going through theirs. And I absolutely appreciate everything that you do, and I'm so fortunate to be alive today to be able to share my story, and I'm even more fortunate to be here right now to share space with you. So thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to come here and share my story, and thank you for everything you do every single day.